Oh, yes.
Welcome back once again, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the new Transformers Studio Series 86, number 7, Dinobot, Slug, and Daniel Witwicky. And I'm putting a disclaimer out here. From this point forward, I am only referring to the Dinobot as Slag. I don't care. He is Slag. Even the early listings called him Slag. He's Slag. I don't care. People in the UK, you can cry about it. Don't care. He's Slag. So Slag, you can see, is an all-new mold. Big old leader class size. He's meant to scale with Grimlock because those two were roughly of the same height and, the old G1 cartoon and all that. And they're big characters. So a lot of people have been waiting on these, properly scaled Dinobots for a while. We're finally getting that here. There haven't been any announcements for any further Studio Series Dinobots or like War for Seibertron Dinobots, but there have been some claims, some rumors that they are coming, at least some of them. I think there's like a Voyager swoop coming, maybe. So that's pretty cool. Our Daniel Witwicky, you can see, is a little minifigure done up in his exosuit, very much in the same vein as Wheelie. He's even got the permanently molded, bent knees for sitting. Not a fan. I have the same, reaction to that I had to Wheelie's. I much would have preferred the character come with a sword or, secondary weapon than a silly minifigure that can't even stand up or pose or anything. Especially in Wheelie's case, because we already have a pretty decent Wheelie from Titans Return or Legends. With Daniel, you could make an argument for, having the first, 2-scale representation with the exosuit. We did get that really little one that came with the core class Bumblebee, but that one's much more scaled to the core class than this. So I don't mind having this one as much as the Wheelie. I just wish it could pose. There's no reason that they could, couldn't put knees on this thing just to have a decent little Daniel action figure. Plus, it could double a Spike, right? Because it's the exosuit. And there's no face. Still no face. Nothing to see there. But let me get off that rant for a bit. If you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at the toys in their packaging. Then we'll open it up. We'll see the instructions. We'll take a look at their very cool backdrop. And we'll be seeing Slag in both his Beast and Robot modes. Take a look at Daniel too. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today. And then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So our toys come in your standard leader class packaging for Studio Series. Just a big old box here. You get their names down here, their movie call out, their numbering, which is 8607, because they're all under, they're like the sub line, right? The artwork, I gotta say, I really do like the artwork. Nice little shot of Slug in his Triceratops mode. You get Daniel riding him, and you can actually see Daniel in there, which is a lot better than the actual product. I also want to point out, at no point in the movie does Daniel ever ride on Slag's back, so I don't know why they did that pairing. I guess they just needed an excuse to have a Daniel figure and had to pair him with something, so leader class was the way to go. Again, still would have preferred the sword, but oh well. You can see the backdrop behind them there. Very Quintesson-esque. Get a close-up of the render here with the number again, Studio Series, Leader Class, all that. And then you get renders for the toys, both Beast and Robot modes for Slag's case. It takes 32 steps to transform, so that's good. He's no slouch. Despite his relatively simple-looking design, he is fairly complicated. I like it. Get the render of Daniel there. And then they call it his backdrop. It's Mockery of Justice, which I think is just a fantastic name for the, Quintesson Pit of Justice area. I'm pretty sure you could take the Pit of Judgment, like the actual set with that backdrop, and combine it with this and similar ones from Studio Series 86 and come up with a pretty convincing looking scene. I'm gonna have to do that once we get all these guys. And then here we get another close-up of the render. You can see their faces very clearly, and the number 86 at top. Okay, here's our instruction book for Slag and Daniel. See, nice little render of Slag on the front. No Daniel to be seen, however. Open it up. You go straight into the transformation for Slag's robot mode to Beast mode. Wraps all the way around the back here. It finishes up over here. And you get this whole dedicated page to show off accessories, right? Shows you how to sit Daniel on Slag's robot shoulder, how to perch him on his forearm. It's kind of interesting. Very laser beak-like thing going on here. How to sit him on Slag's Beast mode using different connectors at his ankles. And then just how to put a gun in his hand in case you don't know how to do that. So, yeah, that's good. These parts right here are especially helpful because he's got different connection points on both Slag and Daniel, so it is good to know. And here you just get a little call out for the Wavemate Grindor, who I'll be reviewing shortly after this one. And here we get a look at Slag's Beast Mode with Daniel riding atop, just so you can see kind of the complete package. And overall, I mean, it's really impressive. I gotta say, the level of cartoon accuracy and yet level of like added detail are just amazing on this guy, right? He looks like he jumped right out of the movie or the cartoon, but then at the same time, he also looks like, you know, something in real life with all sorts of panel lines and little gadgets. There's like a pipe there, a conduit. I mean, very, very cool stuff here. This is the closest we've ever come, and possibly closest we ever will come, to a masterpiece Slag toy. Just looking at the beast mode. We haven't even gotten to, like, you know, the transformation, the robot mode, all that yet. But I mean, it's got that look of like a premium third-party kind of offering. The only place that may not hold true, and it's something that a lot of people have praised, I'm actually not crazy about it, is the weapon storage. You can see his weapon actually makes up the end of his tail, like kind of seamlessly blends to form the tip. Though, you know, it's a bit of an eyesore because it's a completely different color, right? It doesn't look like part of his tail. It looks like a gun just sticking off the end of his tail, which means that, you know, if you were to take this off, because it is removable, you can go ahead, pull it out like so. In fact, I'll show that to you. Just let me, there we go. Now you just get a very incomplete looking tail with a big old slot in the middle. I'm not crazy about that solution. I mean, it's better than him just mounting the gun like up here on a port, like on the side, and you know, then that's really not weapon storage. That's just lazily tacking a weapon on. But I don't know. I wish they could have done that a little better. It kind of gives me vibes of like Kingdom Dinobot, right, where he had the weird purple missile sticking out of the end of his tail, and it just looked really bizarre. But aside from that one little pet peeve, I think the rest of his beast mode is just immaculate. He's got the jaw that opens and closes very, very well. It's got a little hard point right there that you can attach a fire blast effect, like, you know, actual fire on. Like perhaps this one I'm using that I stole from Skylinks, because, you know, it's fire, so it works. It just plugs right in there to emulate his flame breath. So that is a really great thing if you want to pause him, or better yet, pose him. Sorry, I misspoke there. And of course, you could use a variety of fire blast effects. There's probably better ones out there to emulate his fire breath. I know the Last Night Megatron one is popular. I think that should be compatible with this. So if you want a really big fire blast, though it might have a hard time staying on there, you can always use that. So that's really nice touch. They did the same thing for Grimlock, so that's cool. And you see the roof of his mouth is done up in red, which also very kind of cleverly acts as a panel to hide the robot head that you can just kind of make out in there just a little bit. So they really did a good job of just having something there so the robot head's just not looking down at you. Really made that nice. And then his joints are great. He's got ratcheted shoulders there. He's got double bend little elbows or front knees, whatever you want to call them. So that's very, very cool. And then the hind legs are just like simple swivels. The knees bend, the ankles bend a bit, so you can pose them in a few different ways. And there's a lot going on there. Now, aside from that, that's about as far as he gets with posability. And it's kind of a necessity just because of the way Slag transforms and, you know, trying to get that accuracy. He's not going to have a ton of posability, right? He's not going to have like a head that moves back and forth and stuff because it doesn't really work with the way he has to do what he does. So he has everything that I would expect. His legs move and his mouth moves. That's about all I would really honestly expect from this toy unless you went like super, super high budget. So I'm okay with it. I think he's practically perfect. The Daniel figure, let's get a look at that and how he's attached. So you can see you got these like little half holes here that allow you to get this angle connection on these little pegs right behind Slag's head. And you just press them together like that. Pose Daniel around, and he stays on there very, very well, so that's cool. Taking him off, you can see he's got ball-jointed hips, and then completely unarticulated legs, so that's a shame. And now the arms bug me. So the elbow areas are on ball joints, which means you can rotate them like this. You can swivel around all that, and then that's it. The shoulders don't move at all. Now that bugs me. I thought for sure there'd be like a ball joint in here that you can move his shoulders around, get him to put his arms down or something if you want him to, but no. This guy actually has less articulation than the Wheelie does, which is saying a lot. So that is unfortunate. Now, as, a static accessory, he looks pretty good. I mean, the exosuit's a fairly simple design, so you don't have to do much with it. He gets, like, the little very light blue striping down the legs. He's got the little, like, blaster things and all that. The thrusters, back thrusters. It's got, like, the blue hands. And he's even got the little, like, headlight pecs there. And you can see they use just an opaque white dome for the little helmet area. Now, I would have loved if there was actually a little Daniel head in there and this was clear. But at the same time, when you've seen how they've done those like small human figures, even in Masterpiece, they're usually kind of nightmare fuel. Like most of the time they don't even have facial features. They look like something out of Silent Hill. It's just all skin there. Or like if they do have facial features, they're very poorly done. So maybe it's for the best. Maybe Hasbro just kind of conceded like, we're not going to make this work, so let's just hide his face. So it could be what was going on there. While we're focusing on Daniel, let's go ahead and compare him with Wheelie, who, despite their similarities, they're not retools of each other or anything. It's all different parts. So I want to clear that misconception that some people have. All new parts, just very similar engineering when it comes to, the permanently bent knees, where the hole placement is, and like the knees and the heels and all that. And I was talking about, posability. So Wheelie, he gets ball jointed shoulders and no elbows. But I still think that even though it's the same number of, articulated points, it still allows for a greater amount of posing for his arms, right? Especially since one arm's straight, one's bent. His head actually turns on a ball joint, which is great. And he's got a little accessory. So I'd say, even though I don't like the Wheelie, and I think his inclusion was kind of a mistake, they either should have gone with a redeco of the Legends class or just omitted him and done the sword. And, I feel the same way for Daniel, too. I really would have preferred having Slag's sword over this Daniel minifig. It's not that good. It's not something I want to see included with a Slag toy. At least when it comes at the cost of his actual accessories. So they are what they are. I mean, you already know you're getting these. It's not a surprise. It's written right there on the box, right? Slag and Daniel. That's right. It's written Slag on the box. Anything you believe to the contrary is just it's an illusion. So yeah, I think they're wasted potential. I think they're unnecessary. But I mean, for what they are, they're okay, right? They look good posed. They look good riding their characters. So I will give them that. They're not the worst thing in the world. Okay, here is Slag's comparison with his two most recent previous entries. On the left, you get the Power of the Prime Slag toy, which was going for a very G1 toy-inspired look, while also accommodating a combiner gimmick, acting as either an arm or leg for any standard Combiner War style combiner. And then you get the new Selects version of that toy. It's a cartoon-based Slag, which does overall go for a more cartoon-like appearance, especially when it comes to, certain shades used, kind of the lighter frill, the gray horns. You'll see in the robot mode, he has the red head instead of the black one. Though it does still opt for some toy-like details, especially the clear layering on the gold pieces. And for any of you regular viewers noticing that you haven't seen this guy in a review for me before, that's still being filmed kind of concurrently with some other things. I'm doing a lot of shuffling. I think I'm going to do the Volcanicus review right after this one, for anyone that might be wondering what happened to that. I just figured it'd be nice to get this guy done first so I have something to compare it to for the Volcanicus review. I'd say there's a method to the chaos, but honestly there's not. I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, you can see this kind of gradual progression from purely toy-based to kind of somewhat in between to something that's really, really going for cartoon appearance. Right down to the colorings, the proportions, all that. Still has some realistic detailing thrown in, which I'm not against. It doesn't really conflict with the cartoon appearance. I always look at the 80s cartoon as like something you were staring at through kind of a smudged lens or while squinting a bit, where certain detail was lost, and that, you know, kind of explains the simplistic look of things, right? If you were to pull those characters out in real life, there's no doubt they would look like more than just solid colored rectangles. Now, as far as, you know, comparing these dino modes with all three of these guys, here, I'll turn them all the same way. This guy's got some advantages, some disadvantages. Easily has the best proportions when matching how the character should look, right? He doesn't sacrifice anything for a combiner gimmick. His mouth can actually open properly. I mean, these guys, their mouths can open, but like in a very unnatural, unhinged way. Right? They're not really meant to be held open, whereas his works a little better. Of course, that is also because they cheat the transformation with the whole mouth and robot chest, but we'll get into that. One way I will say these guys are better is that they don't mess up the tail for having a weapon storage. Now, of course, you may prefer that over what they do have, which is just slapping weapons on their hips and backs and stuff, which really doesn't look great. I just didn't even include them here because they would just be kind of bulky and in the way. So I guess it kind of depends on personal preference, right? Do you want some halfway decent weapon storage, or do you want a more complete looking dino mode? Because unfortunately, you can't have both. Hasbro and Takara have decided you're not getting both, so deal with that. Now, for probably the most exciting group shot, we get Slag here with Grimlock, his leader and teammate, done at more or less the same scale. Now, granted, we've only got 2 out of the 5 so far. This isn't in any way a guarantee that we're going to get the full Dinobot team at this leader to Voyager scale. But, I mean, makes things look up a little bit, you know? If leaks and rumors are to be believed, we're supposed to be getting a Sludge and a Swoop before Studio Series 86 comes to a close, and I think Snarl is not quite planned yet. Though they're probably trying to find a way to work them in there somewhere, maybe in the, you know, next iteration of Generations or whatever. So this gives me hope. Like, we did only just a few years ago get a complete Dinobot team, but a lot of people are very dissatisfied with it because either didn't like the combiner gimmick, which admittedly, even though I'm not against it in principle, did kind of sacrifice the quality of the Beast and Robot modes a bit, or they really didn't like the scale, which I'm in full agreement on. I still think, to this day, Volcanica should have been the Titan class Proud of the Primes, and Predaking should have been a standard size combiner. It would have made so much more sense scale-wise. Yes, I know marketing creates an issue with that because it's hard to sell Titan classes and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I am being selfish tonight. Hasbro should cater to me. I don't care what marketing says. But yeah, anyway, this is so much more like what people envisioned when they wanted updated Dinobots, right? Something that could scale well against your Optimus Prime and your Ultra Magnus and all that stuff. So now comparing these two, I mean, obviously very different in form. One's a Triceratops, one's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But I will point out some things. For one, Grimlock, like the Power of the Primes type Slags, doesn't have an integrated weapon storage. You just slap his gun sideways across his back. In my opinion, that's the biggest flaw with this Grimlock. Like, not only is it just slapped on top of him like so many toys are nowadays, it doesn't even point forward. It's not even usable. It's just strewn across his back. You can't even make it point forward if you wanted to. So that was kind of disappointing. I didn't like it. I know a lot of people don't like the hump on his back. It doesn't bother me much, but it is, you know, kind of hit against his accuracy, so I get that. For me, probably the thing that bugs me the most with Grimlock, and they managed to fix it a bit with Slag, I hate the very obvious exposed robot fists that are just right there on the insides of his ankles. I long for the days when leader classes, you know, had the budget to like put a panel here, you know, just something that opened up to hide the fist away. They couldn't be bothered to do that. I mean, they've already skimped quite a few things on this guy's budget, and they couldn't even put panels to hide that. Now, what Slag does is really cool. His fists go on the underside here. They tuck away on the bottoms of his feet, which, while still exposed, are much better hidden because who can see the bottom of his feet when he's standing there, right? Unless you're displaying him on a piece of glass, you know, looking up, or you got him rearing up on his hind legs or something, you're not going to see the robot fists. So I thought that was a much better move, and I wish they could have either done the forearm panels or maybe done something more akin to this for Grimlock. So I think, even though Grimlock's excellent overall, I still think had to iron out a few bumps, and by the time they designed Slag, they were a little better getting the hang for making this work at, this scale and this kind of budgeting. So I think Slag comes out to be just slightly better of a dinosaur mode than Grimlock does. So when it comes to the alt mode, I think Slag just absolutely knocks us out of the park. He comes together so well. The fact that they covered up the robot head with the mouth roof was a nice touch. You can do the whole fire blast thing. Posability is about what you'd expect for, the big old clunky robotic dinosaur. Still not crazy about the tail weapon thing, but minor nitpick. Some people really like it. I don't know, I think it's a bit of an eyesore. And Daniel actually rides him really well in this mode too. The way the connection works, the way he sits on him, it looks very natural. It looks awesome. He looks very excited to be on top of a dinosaur. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Now, may not be canonical in any sense, right? This never does happen in the movie, but it's cool. It's a big what if. What if Daniel rode on Slag's back? There's nothing saying he didn't at some other point in time. So yeah, overall, really loving this dino mode. And I think it actually came out a little bit better than Grimlock's, and it's got me, pretty excited for what comes in the robot mode. Now it's time we do our transformation for Slag's robot mode. So, first thing you want to do is remove his weapon from his tail, like so. And you want to fold his hind legs up. So you want to bring the ankles in first, and then bring the knees in. So you compact them down. Same thing here. Kind of get those out of the way. You're going to lift up his little rib flap things like this. Going to get all that nice and out of the way. And we're going to bring the faux jaw chest down. We're going to pull these panels outward. And it's going to pop these free from the frill. In fact, you might want to do that a little bit first just to keep it from hanging up. But these are on a double hinge, so you're kind of swinging them out and back in to widen up his chest, which is a really nice touch. And then you're actually taking this whole lower jaw section, like close the bottom jaw, and then swing this whole bit all the way down, like so. Head, you want it just kind of tilted back out of the way. And you want to bring up his robot head. Like that. Close the chest. Oh, hold on. That's too far out. There you go. Make sure it meshes onto everything well. All right, so you get all that. You're gonna fold these little bottom frill bits just kind of back and out of the way. Make sure the dino head is pushed down as far as it goes. All right, and we can go ahead and rotate out his fists. Best way to do is push down this little kind of tab bit right here so you can get the fists. And you don't get a lot of good purchase. So it might be a little hard to get out, but you don't want to use like an object to really pry this out because the fists are painted. You can cheat, use his gun. Watch this. Haha! So if you're having a hard time, you can use the gun. So once you get the fist flipped out, you actually spin it around. Really nice, clever way to get the fist to fit all the way inside the dino feet. I like that. Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, like, oh, well, Plenty of Toys do that. Yeah, but they haven't done that in a while. We're kind of bringing back some good old engineering here. But I think the old Masterpiece designer worked on this, so you can really tell. Like, you can see the quality. 'Cause I love the old Masterpiece toys. A lot more than the new ones, for the most part. All right, so you get all this going on. Then you're gonna kind of unplug this a little bit, just kind of loosen everything up. You take this whole tail section, all this stuff, swing it up, out of the way. Then you're gonna straighten his legs out, just kind of unfurl everything. Get it all nice and straight. Spin them around at the waist, like so. So you get this. And this is pretty cool. So you get these little panel pieces that swing up, which allow you to bring those dino legs like in. Kind of rotate them up and swing that back down to make it nice and tidy. So I love that. Gets rid of gaps, all that fun stuff. Oh, that didn't go in all the way. Hold on. Hold on. There we go. Better. All right, swing that in. Da-da-da. Boom, close it. Just like that. All right, now that you've got kind of the main body all set up, we got to deal with this little mess in the back. So quite a bit of hinges, quite a bit going on. So what you want to do is you want to take all these little parts from the little back plates down to the tail, and kind of condense it up on itself. So you're going to kind of fold in, till you get something like this, where the tail just kind of accordions over everything else, like so. Then you're going to raise this back panel up till the little slots here can just mesh with the little notches on the back of his head frill. That'll help hold it in place. And then you take all this and you just push it up against his back, and it won't really click in place so much, but you'll just kind of feel it mesh in there and stay there. So once you get all that, you go ahead, you're gonna pose your guy, get Slug looking awesome and intimidating like he is. Get that ankle tilt going, you know. There you go. And then of course, you get his rifle, plug it into either hand. Generally, right hand is the default, because Hasbro's a bunch of lefty-hating bigots. Hating on lefties, freaking Hasbro. And here you go. This is his robot mode, and it is big. It's got presence. It's intimidating. It's perfect. Like, it works so well for the character. And they managed to do it while kind of reinventing the transformation in a way that still gives you more or less the same end results in both modes, but changes things around. You'll notice his feet don't form the back plates anymore. The back plates just kind of fold up in there and all that. So they do things, you know, kind of like the new Masterpiece way of getting those tune-accurate robot modes by using some fake parts and stuff. But the only time a real fake part is used is the chest bit, which, you know, there's really no way around that, because in the cartoon, his jaw was gold in beast mode, and it magically changed shade to gray in the robot mode. So in the name of accuracy, they were kind of forced to use a faux part there. So I can forgive that a lot more than some other faux part usage I've seen in recent years. Now, as far as posability, this guy has all of it. He's got a nice ball-jointed head, which can look around inside of this dino head cavity. He's got somewhat ratcheted outward shoulder swing, ratcheted front and back. These flop around, those are supposed to stay in place. He's got bicep swivel. He's got double bend knees, and like nice seamless ones too. Like, that looks natural. Doesn't look all janky. It looks good. I like that. He's got wrist swivel. Look at that. He's got waist swivel, which is nice. He's got the universal hips on a ratchet in the front and back direction, and then they swing outward on friction. And they use kind of that whole same like kind of skirt way of doing it that Grimlock uses, which is pretty nice. It looks pretty good. He's got a high thigh swivel. He's got double jointed knees. This ratchet on this knee is a little tight. Doesn't go very naturally. This one's a little looser on my copy. So much posability. And then he's got the ankle tilt. And, I mean, look at this guy. He is absolutely fantastic. And even from the back, he looks pretty good. Keep that in place. He's got the tail hanging off the back, but it's nice and compact and everything, and looks pretty natural. He's got his wings still, which look very cool, like the molded-in guns and all that. And the backs of the legs actually look pretty clean. Like, you can see the kibble, but it's all just kind of part of it. There's no big gaps. Looks really, really good. And poses well. I mean, God, I can't stop gushing over this guy. This is easily... Fold that back. Boop. I mean, the robot mode just looks fantastic. It's like everything I could have asked for, you know, a nice screen-accurate Slag in robot mode. And a well-scaled one at that. Now here's our robot comparison with the other Slags. And biggest difference obviously is just the size. This guy is like twice the size of these two. And as he should be, he should be a big, big boy. I will say, whereas the beast modes were a little more give and take, I thought they were pretty solid for our combiner guys. I think with the robot mode, the new Studio Series easily outshines these two. And I think the biggest reason for that is just they're very lanky looking. Like Slag is known as a bruiser. He's someone that's kind of wide, beefy looking, very dangerous. And these guys are very tall and skinny looking. And it doesn't really work for the character. And of course, it's a result of the fact that they gotta be combiner limbs, so certain proportions have to be, very exact to make sure that they're of equal length to other limbs. But I think it hurts Slag a lot more than most of the other Power of the Primes based Dinobots. They don't look right. I don't know, the whole thing seems very off, very narrow hips and narrow shoulders. I think this guy clearly outshines these two in pretty much every regard. Here's the ever so important comparison with Grimlock's robot mode. So you can see how these two look just standing tall next to each other. And not only do they just look amazing together and, clearly part of a team, but I've actually gone and double checked and I can tell you that they scale perfectly. When you look at the Sunbow scale, Grimlock's a little bit taller by, going by head, and then Slug's little dino hood thing puts him being, about half a head to a head taller than Grimlock. So really, they nailed it. And originally I thought they didn't. I thought Slag was a little too big. No, he is perfectly scaled to Grimlock, so I love that. It really just makes this feel like more of a definitive take on the characters. And I think Grimlock's robot mode is a lot stronger than his dino mode, with the sole exception being the big old gaping holes in the forearms. They took what would be the perfect robot mode for Grimlock and did that. And you can see Slag doesn't suffer from that since he went the genius way of storing his fists on the underside, so he gets nice full forearms. So he looks just a little bit more polished than Grimlock does. Though Grimlock still, in his own right, looks really awesome, right? Still very intimidating, big old back wings, all that cool stuff. And, God, I'm just dying to see what the full, nice assembled team is going to look like in possibly a couple years' time. This is really a teaser for what will essentially be the pinnacle of a Dinobot collection. Because, being honest, I don't see them finishing the Dinobots within Masterpiece. You could argue that the Masterpiece Grimlock's better than this one, but I don't think he's ever going to get proper teammates. So I think this is as perfect as it's going to get for an assembled team. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't show you guys how Slag and Daniel look against their backdrop. Admittedly, I do forget to show these backdrops about half the time. Yikes. But I remember this time. So you can see it's got, the Mockery of Justice, right? Which is just the Quintesson stronghold there. Just kind of generic blue techno panels in the back. And Slag fits just about perfectly, right? He's a little bit shorter than it, so he's not standing up over the top of the backdrop, which is always nice. And then, of course, can't forget about old Daniel. We haven't really looked at him since the transformation. So now we want to see how he interacts with Slag. So, like we saw in the instructions, he can sit on his shoulder using a little peg right there on the back of his thigh. Kind of a tight fit, but it'll go. So you can get him up there like this. That looks pretty cool as is, and probably my preferred way of displaying him. But if you want to get a little different, little sound wavy, again, I'm not really sure why they included this. It's interesting. You can go ahead and have Slag lift up his arm and plug Daniel into his forearm. Very tight fit. Yeah. And apparently prone to popping out. Come on. There we go. Okay. So you can get it like that. And I don't know, you can use Daniel like a parrot or something. That's a weird one. I'm all for, added compatibility. Doesn't hurt anything to be there. Just a weird choice. I'm not sure at what point Daniel would ever be sitting on his forearm like that.
Daniel, deploy. Operation, be annoying. You know.
I don't know. I also want to point out something I didn't really notice. So his cannon here is actually 3 pieces of plastic, which is really rare for modern toys. You got the 2 halves, and then the handle, which is like a dark gray, is actually a separate piece too. And I'm not sure why they did that, other than to make it easier to not have hollow bits in the cannon. That's the only thing I could think of, right? Because they have a hard time doing like single casts of plastic without having to put some kind of hollow bits in there, rather than just like a big solid chunk. So this might have been a way around that, to just kind of have a shell that goes around the handle. That would be my guess, because when you see these single piece weapons, they do tend to be rather hollow. Whether it's on the sides, the bottom, somewhere it usually has to give. And you can see his weapon is just solid all the way around. So yeah, I'm guessing that's why they did that, and I'm thankful for it. I think it looks really good. And this completes our look at the new Studio Series 86 Slag and Daniel. Honestly, I'm absolutely in love with this toy. Slag is everything I could have hoped for. He does everything that Grimlock did, but refines things and fixes a lot of small issues that Grimlock had as far as weapon storage, hollow bits. I mean, this guy looks really, really close to a masterpiece toy. I know you hear that a lot, but like he really, really does. And if you traveled back in time a couple years and be like, hey, check out this new masterpiece Slag, I'd believe you. Like from like a first glance, I'd be like, yeah, that looks like it. Now there's some things I could point out, right? You got the kind of hollow horns here, which bit of an eyesore. I didn't really touch on that before, but yeah, you can see the inside bits are hollow, which is not surprising, but still disappointing. Like, come on, just give us solid horns. So there are some small giveaways that this isn't really up to that masterpiece level, but boy, he still looks pretty close and easily matches a lot of those third-party offerings you see, right? Because Dinobot's been very popular in third-party. They haven't got a lot of love from Hasbro and Takara, aside from like some small combiner ones. And then, of course, Grimlock, he gets redone to death, but the other guys usually fall to the wayside, and Slag's one of those. So I think this is just easily the best toy, this character we've ever had, and one of the best things to come out of Studio Series 86, just period. I mean, 86 has been really hit or miss. Some of their things are absolute gems. Some, I think, could have spent more time on the drawing board. But this guy, I think, ticks all the right boxes for me. Again, I know I've said it before, really would prefer his sword over a Daniel figure, but at least the Daniel figure is kind of cool. Still don't know why they can't give them knees. Like, yeah, I know it's a parts count thing, budget, but like, it's not hard, right? Single hinge knees. That would have been all I asked for. Simple, not even pins, right? They could have been like kind of crappy knees where you can pop them off easily, but just better than a solid molded piece. That bugs me because it doesn't pose well on its own. What if you don't want him riding on Slag's shoulder? What if you just want him standing? The same thing with Wheelie, they're doing again. I hate that. Like, just give him knees so he can stand up, so you don't have to have him sitting. Other than that, though, I think this guy is phenomenal, easily worth the cost of a leader class admission. And I think if you pick this up, you're going to be very, very happy with it. I mean, he's one of the figures I've enjoyed the most in a good while now, which is saying a lot because there's been a lot of good stuff lately, but he's been just top notch. I love this. I love the interesting new ways they made his transformation work while still allowing him some posability and, kind of some better proportions in both modes. I love everything about this. I highly, highly recommend him. Of course, that is just how I feel about Slag. I'd love to know what you all think in the comments section. Are you as enamored with this toy as I am, or do you find more flaws with it? Do you plan on picking it up, or if you already have it, what do you think? Are you happy you did? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me for this look at the new Transformers Studio Series 86 Slag, not Slug, and Daniel. And with all that said, I will see you next time.